Welcome to the Elder Darkness. Tonight we drift into one of the most pivotal moments in the long, tangled tale of Middle-earth. A river glimmers under a silver moon. A weary king clutches something too heavy for any man to bear, and fate sharpens its teeth in the shadows. You will probably fall asleep listening to this story because honestly it goes on longer than Isildur's list of bad life choices. But if you're awake long enough, you'll witness how victory can sour into downfall, and how the tiniest band of gold can undo an entire age. If you enjoy this journey, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the Elder Darkness, and leave a comment sharing where in the world you're listening from tonight. Now, lie back and relax as we travel to the world of Middle-earth. Isildur's triumph and temptation. Fresh from Sauron's defeat, Isildur claims the One Ring, savoring glory but sowing the seed of his undoing. The smoke of Mordor still hangs in the air when Isildur, son of Elendil, walks upon the blasted plain. The Dark Lord has fallen, his finger hacked away by the hilt of a broken sword. The very mountain trembles, as if still in disbelief that the power forged within its fire has slipped from its master's grasp. And there, lying among the ash, gleams the One Ring, small, innocent, barely heavier than a coin. Yet every captain, every soldier who watches knows it pulses with a gravity deeper than the abyss. Isildur stoops, his hand shaking not from fear but from triumph. He has slain no dragon, yet here is a treasure greater than gold. He picks up the ring, and at once its smooth surface warms against his skin. It seems to fit him perfectly. The shards of Narsil clatter to the ground, forgotten for a heartbeat, as the ring's golden curve flashes like firelight caught in glass. Elrond half-elven and Círdan the shipwright approach him, their robes scorched from battle but their eyes steady. They tell him the ring must be cast into Mount Doom, destroyed while the fire yet blazes. The mountain groans in agreement, lava veining its slopes like an angry scar. But Isildur shakes his head. His face, still smeared with blood and ash, sets hard with defiance. This, he says, is Wergild for his father Elendil and his brother Anárion, both slain in the war. It is his compensation, his right, his pride. Middle-earth historians still debate whether Elrond and Círdan could have wrestled it from him there and then. 2 against 1, perhaps the ring would never have survived beyond that day. But they do not. They let him go, and so history slides down its darkest fork. Isildur marches back to his men, the ring secreted in a pouch upon his chest. His army cheers, though they cannot see the trinket. They only see a king triumphant, the slayer of the Dark Lord, the banner of the West now unstained by shadow. The air is crisp, the stars clearer than they have been in centuries. Yet beneath it all hums the faint whisper of the ring. He does not yet hear words, not clearly. But the metal presses into his skin like a heartbeat not his own. When he closes his eyes that night, exhausted on the battlefield, he dreams not of his father's stern smile but of endless thrones, gilded crowns, a line of kings never ending. The kind of dream that leaves a man both restless and strangely euphoric upon waking. And here's the thing, Isildur was not foolish. He was valiant, seasoned in war, learned in lore. He had seen Sauron's cruelty firsthand. He knew power corrupted, for Númenor itself had sunk beneath the sea when men reached too far. Yet even he, with all his caution, believed he could master the ring, which is a bit like thinking you can outstare a cat. Technically possible, but almost always ends in humiliation. The march north is slow. The land of Mordor is a wound still bleeding smoke, its roads treacherous, its rivers foul. Isildur orders the ring kept close to him always, though he does not yet wear it upon his finger. He calls it the Precious, a name that will echo later from a very different throat. Yes, remember how Gollum could hardly say anything else? Funny how nicknames stick around in the oddest ways. Each day, Isildur writes in his scrolls, recording victories, losses, and the promises he intends to fulfill once the kingdom is restored. Yet tucked between lines of military logistics, a new obsession leaks through. He praises the beauty of the ring, the way it shines brighter than mithril, the way its circle seems to hold infinity. He insists it is safe, that it will serve as a token of remembrance, a badge of honor. But already his sons notice their father's mood changing. He smiles less, his eyes wander more often to the pouch. His hand strays across his chest like a man checking for a wound that refuses to close. His counselors murmur in private, yet none dare challenge him. He is their king, the one who brought Sauron low, and if he says this treasure is his, then surely it must be so. Far away, in the quiet halls of Rivendell, Elrond sighs. He has seen pride before. He knows how swiftly it curdles into doom. But even he cannot predict how soon Isildur's claim will be tested, nor how mercilessly fate will pounce when the moment arrives. For now, Isildur rides north with banners still bright, the one ring gleaming secretly against his heart. Victory tastes sweet upon his tongue, though it carries the faint aftertaste of ash. The road bends toward destiny, and he walks it willingly, unaware that every step forward is one step closer to ambush, to river, to loss. The burden of the ring. As Isildur journeys north, the ring begins its slow corruption, whispering through memory and desire while he resists counsel to surrender it. The campfires of Isildur's host flicker across the dark hills as the long march continues north. Horses snort, soldiers laugh, armor clinks as it's laid aside for the night, and somewhere a bard scratches out a tune on a harp that sounds suspiciously out of tune. But above all of this earthly noise, something subtler hums. The ring, resting in its pouch against Isildur's chest, thrums like a second pulse, softer than breath, louder than thought. First, he imagines it. The fatigue of war, the sleepless nights, the ache of carrying his people's burdens. Yet as days fold into weeks, he can no longer deny that the ring is speaking. Not in clear words, not yet, but in half-formed urgings, like a whisper heard through a closed door. It pulls at him to look back toward the east, toward the black slopes of Mount Doom, to turn around, to reconsider. He ignores it, but ignoring becomes harder with each sunrise. Middle-earth historians still debate whether Isildur ever truly wore the ring in these weeks. Some say he slipped it upon his finger in secret, vanishing into the twilight just to test its power. Others claim he resisted, holding himself apart until the very end. His own scrolls hint at neither directly, yet there are gaps in his writing, entire days where he reports nothing at all. And in those silences, suspicion thrives. What we do know is that his sons begin to notice. Elendil, the eldest, rides beside him and asks pointedly whether such a thing should be borne by one man alone. Isildur frowns and assures him the ring is merely a keepsake, a memorial for Elendil and Anárion. Yet his tone is too sharp, his hand pressed too tightly against the pouch. The conversation ends, but a seed of unease is planted. Meanwhile, the countryside softens as they move north. They leave the scorched plains of Gorgoroth behind, trading blackened wasteland for scrubby hills and grasslands still brown from ashfall. Streams gurgle again with clean water, though the taste is faintly bitter, as if the land itself is trying to wash away centuries of darkness. Each night the soldiers grow more relaxed, more convinced that their journey is safe. They even gamble again, tossing dice on blankets by torchlight, shouting when someone rolls and probably cheating, but nobody calls it. It is in this air of almost normalcy that the ring presses hardest. Isildur dreams of Numenor, the land of his youth now swallowed by the sea. In visions, the ring shows him a rebuilt isle, rising from the waves, crowned with towers of white stone. He stands at its center, king immortal, his banner fluttering across a horizon that never ends. He wakes breathless, half laughing, half terrified. A sane man might dismiss such dreams as grief. But when the dream is accompanied by the cool weight of the ring in your hand, it feels almost like prophecy. And here's a quirky tidbit. The Dunedain, Isildur's people, were famous for their unusually long lifespans. They could live well past 200 years, which makes the rest of us look like mayflies by comparison. So when the ring whispered of endless life, you can imagine how tempting that must have been for a man who already carried more years than most. Immortality wasn't a far-flung fantasy. It was simply a longer extension of what he already knew. Still, the king was not entirely blinded. In moments of clarity, he considered sending the ring away, perhaps to Rivendell, perhaps to Lindon where Gil-galad had once ruled. But always the thought slipped away, replaced by excuses. He told himself it was too dangerous to entrust such a weapon to another. He convinced himself his bloodline alone could safeguard it. This kind of rationalization is familiar to anyone who's ever tried to diet but kept accidentally buying cookies. The mind finds ways to justify the indulgence it secretly craves. As the host nears the Vale of Anduin, tension sharpens. Scouts whisper of orc bands lurking in the forests, remnants of Sauron's armies who refuse to believe their master is gone. The orcs cling to the shadows like ticks, striking small villages, melting away before retaliation can arrive. The soldiers mutter, but Isildur remains calm. They are merely scraps of an enemy already defeated, he says. Harmless. Elendil isn't so sure. One evening by the fire, he presses again. He begs his father to surrender the ring, arguing that no single man, no matter how noble, should bear such a burden. Isildur snaps back with uncharacteristic heat, reminding him sharply who is father, who is son, who is king. The silence that follows is heavy, broken only when a soldier sneezes from the other side of the fire, a sound so awkwardly timed that even the argument falters. Yet beneath the paternal authority, doubt gnaws. Isildur knows Elendil is right. He can feel the ring coiling tighter around his thoughts, making him protective, possessive. He tells himself he holds it only for remembrance, yet he strokes the pouch absent-mindedly as if it were a living pet. The contradiction eats at him, though not enough to pry it from his grasp. At dawn, mist curls thick around the river as they approach the Gladden fields. Tall reeds sway, dragonflies skim across still pools, and birdsong hides the silence of watching eyes. The land looks peaceful, deceptively so, like a stage set waiting for the curtain to rise. And as Isildur gazes across the water, the ring burns against his chest. For the first time, he almost hears a word, not just a feeling, but a syllable whispered low. It is an echo that will not fade, even when the world erupts in battle. Ambush at the Gladden fields. Orcs spring their trap, Isildur's guard is slaughtered, and his fateful attempt to escape with the ring unravels in chaos. The morning is clear when they reach the Gladden fields, that wide marshland where the River Anduin slows into pools and reedy channels. Mist lingers, drifting in pale ribbons, catching the sunlight like strands of silver hair. Birds flutter out of the tall reeds as the column of men wades carefully along the narrow causeways. For all its beauty, the place has a hush to it, like a cathedral where even whispers seem too loud. The hush doesn't last. From the treeline, a horn sounds low, guttural, cruel. Shadows break loose among the trees. Orcs, dozens upon dozens, charge screaming across the flats. The soldiers of the Dunedain have only moments to raise shields before black-feathered arrows hiss like angry snakes. Men fall into the reeds with sharp splashes. Horses rear, whinny, bolt. The air fills with that horrible chorus of iron, flesh, and fear. Isildur reacts as a warrior first. He rallies his guard, shouting commands that cut through the chaos. His sons draw blades beside him, forming a knot of resistance in the storm. For a time, the battle balances, the Númenórean steel holding firm against the Orcish rush. But numbers tell their cruel truth. For every orc slain, 2 more crawl out of the brush. The marsh becomes a slaughterhouse, the reeds trembling under the weight of blood. The ring pulses at Isildur's chest, a hot coal against his skin. He knows this is no mere skirmish. This is an ambush carefully laid, aimed at him, at the treasure he carries. The realization cuts colder than steel. Sauron's servants have not abandoned their master's cause. They know the ring survives, and they will bleed the earth dry to reclaim it. Middle-earth historians still debate whether the orcs truly understood what they sought. Some argue they simply hunted Isildur as a symbol of the West's victory, nothing more. Others insist a darker instinct drove them, that the ring itself called to them across distance, like a beacon only servants of shadow could sense. Whatever the truth, the outcome is the same. The ambush is no accident. The Númenóreans fight valiantly. Elendil cuts down 3 foes in quick succession, his blade flashing like sunlight on water. Cirion, younger and hot-blooded, hurls himself into the thick of it, shouting until his voice cracks. For a fleeting moment, they look like heroes from the old lays, shining defiance against the dark. But marshland swallows valor as surely as quicksand. Bodies pile, the circle tightens, and the hope of survival thins. Isildur feels the ring's weight grow unbearable. It burns against him, begging for release, for use. He thinks of his sons, dozens of orcs swarming them, his proud line cut down like weeds. He thinks of the men around him, fighting desperately for his banner. And he thinks, bitterly, of the long road home that will never be walked if he dies here. In that crucible of despair, the temptation becomes action. He slips the ring onto his finger. The world lurches. Sound dulls, colors blur, his body fades. To the eyes of friend and foe alike, Isildur vanishes. Orcs scream in confusion, slashing at empty air. The king stumbles free of the melee, unseen, unheard. The marsh opens before him like an escape route carved by destiny itself. But invisibility is not invincibility. The ring stretches him thin, like butter scraped over too much bread, as Bilbo Baggins will one day put it. Isildur feels drained, his limbs leaden, his breath ragged. Every step through the reeds feels harder than the last. The irony is sharp. He has won his freedom, yet it tastes like drowning. Behind him, his sons fight on, unaware their father has slipped away. Elendil, seeing the line breaking, shouts for Isildur to flee, to save the ring if he cannot save them. That cry, echoing across the marsh, is both blessing and curse. It grants the king leave to run, yet it chains him forever to the memory of abandoning his blood. And here's a fringe tidbit that rarely makes the songs. In some of the oldest drafts of this tale, Tolkien toyed with the idea that Isildur tried to swim with armor still strapped on, which is either the bravest or the dumbest life choice imaginable. In the final version, he does strip some gear, but the detail lingers as a reminder: heroes can be undone by very human mistakes. Isildur splashes into the river, the Anduin cool and strong around him. He strikes out, invisible, the ring cold now against his finger, its power demanding absolute obedience. The water closes over his head, muffling the battle behind him. For a moment it feels like escape, but the ring is a treacherous ally, chooses its own fate, not his. The ring lost to time, Isildur meets his doom in the waters, the ring slipping into darkness, setting in motion the long-hidden chain of Middle-earth's fate. The river closes around him, cool currents tugging at his limbs, reeds brushing against his shoulders like fingers trying to hold him back. Isildur swims, invisible, his strokes long and practiced, his Númenórean body strong even in exhaustion. The battle fades behind him into the roar of water and the pounding of his heart. For a fleeting instant, he believes he will survive, that the ring has spared him, that he will live to see Arnor again, to hold his remaining sons, to carve triumph from tragedy. Then it happens. The ring slips. No sword, no arrow, no Orcish claw can match the treachery of that tiny circle of gold. It wriggles as if alive, sliding from his finger with the slick ease of wet metal. One moment it is part of him, a burning pulse on his hand. The next it is gone, tumbling through the dark water. His body snaps back into visibility with a shimmer, a pale figure suddenly flailing in the middle of the Anduin. The orcs on the bank see him instantly. Arrows whistle cruel and fast. Several strike true, and though Tolkien spares us the grisly details, we can imagine the sting, the shock, the breath knocked from lungs already drowning. Isildur gasps, blood mixing with river foam. The water around him darkens as he struggles on, still reaching, still fighting, even as his strength unravels like thread. The ring, meanwhile, drifts downward. It spins once, catching a shaft of sunlight, gleaming like an eye. Then it vanishes into the riverbed, swallowed by mud and silt, its fire extinguished but not destroyed. Middle-earth historians still debate whether the ring actively betrayed him, abandoning a king it deemed unworthy, or whether it merely obeyed the laws of slippery physics. Either way, its will or its accident shapes the ages to come. Isildur sinks beneath the surface, armor dragging him down, his lifeblood mingling with the currents. The reeds close over, erasing all trace. His sons die on the marsh behind him, cut down in valor, while the orcs jeer and vanish into the forest with nothing to show for their ambush but corpses. The battlefield quiets. Birds return. Dragonflies skim the water. The world resumes, indifferent to the fall of a king. Centuries later, the gladdened fields still whisper of that day. Local hunters tell tales of strange glimmers beneath the water, of shadows moving where no fish swim. They avoid the pools at dusk, muttering of curses. And in Rivendell, Elrond sighs once more when he recalls the moment he and Círdan begged Isildur to destroy the ring. History, after all, is just the record of people ignoring excellent advice. The ring lies in silence for over 2,000 years. Covered by mud, caressed by the slow drift of the Anduin, it waits. Generations of men rise and fall. Whole kingdoms crumble. The Shire is settled. Hobbits squabble over fields and second breakfasts, and the world forgets. But not forever, for the ring remembers. It always remembers. And one day, a curious, half-starved creature named Smeagol will fish along this very riverbank, and history will turn once more. And here's a quirky tidbit you might not know. In the earliest drafts, Tolkien considered having the ring lie at the bottom of the sea instead of a river, which would have made its recovery much less likely. Imagine the entire trilogy if Gollum had needed scuba gear. Thankfully or fatefully, Tolkien chose the river, giving the ring just enough accessibility to crawl back into the story. The tale of Isildur's Folly is no grand saga of victory. It is not the triumph of Helm's Deep, nor the glory of the Pelennor Fields. It is the story of a single choice, a refusal to let go, and how that refusal rippled through millennia. In his pride, Isildur thought himself master of the ring. In truth, he was merely its first long casualty. The reeds sway in the wind even now. The water glimmers with secret light. Somewhere beneath the surface, mud cradles a band of gold, patient as stone, biding its time. And though kings fall and empires fade, the ring waits, hungry still. And now, as the story settles, so too may you. The clash of steel fades, the cries of battle drift away, leaving only the hush of water sliding through reeds. The gladdened fields, once loud with terror, soften again into a place of quiet. Imagine lying on the riverbank, the grass cool beneath your cheek, the evening air carrying the faint scent of water and earth. The sun lowers beyond the hills, painting the surface of the Anduin with strokes of gold and crimson. Dragonflies drift lazily over still pools, their wings catching the last light of day. A heron takes flight in slow, deliberate arcs, each wing beat stretching the silence a little longer. And the reeds sway gently, as if the world itself breathes in a calmer rhythm. In that rhythm you may rest. The story of Isildur reminds us that burdens can be heavy, that choices can be fateful. But here, in this softened space, those truths no longer weigh on you. The water carries them away. The long march, the sudden ambush, even the ring's sly whisper. They dissolve into the current, leaving nothing but stillness. You are safe. Safe to close your eyes. Safe to let your thoughts drift like leaves on the water. Safe to follow the quiet sound of the river until it blends with your own steady breathing. The ring may wait in darkness, but you do not need to. For you, the journey ends in calm. So breathe deeply, let the last embers of the tale fade into night, and rest easy, traveler of Middle-earth.